Think guilt is bad? Think again. It's time to weaponize your financial guilt to accelerate your wealth. These words may seem counterintuitive, but believe it or not, guilt can be a powerful ally in your financial journey. You see, the human brain has a fascinating way of turning negative emotions into productive actions, and guilt is no exception. Let's challenge the common perception about guilt for a moment. Most of us associate guilt with negative emotions, a painful sting from a bad decision, or a lingering regret. But what if we flipped the script? What if we used guilt not as a reminder of our past mistakes, but as a strategic tool to prevent future ones? Welcome to the unconventional world of behavioral finance, where emotions and psychology play as significant a role as the numbers on your balance sheet. Behavioral finance studies how we make financial decisions and how those decisions impact our financial health. It's a field that merges the technicalities of finance with the complexities of human behavior. And it's in this intersection where guilt finds its strategic place. Imagine for a moment that guilt is not your enemy, but your ally. Each pang of guilt you feel when you make an impulse purchase or miss a savings goal is a signal. It's your brain's way of saying, hey, let's not do that again. But too often we ignore these signals. We push them aside and continue with our detrimental financial habits. But what if we listened? What if we took that guilt and used it as fuel to change our habits, to make better decisions, to accelerate our wealth? So, ready to turn that guilt into gold? Let's dive in. In the following scenes, we'll explore the science behind guilt, how to trigger it strategically, and how to use it to stack beneficial financial habits. We'll share real-life stories of people who have turned their financial guilt into a wealth-building opportunity, and we'll show you how to measure the positive outcomes from your own guilt triggers. Remember, when you stop avoiding guilt and start using it, you don't just feel better, you get richer. So strap in and prepare to see your financial guilt in a whole new light. Let's venture into the world of behavioral finance. Here, guilt isn't just an emotion, it's a powerful catalyst. In the depths of our brains lies an intricate network of neurons and synapses, working tirelessly to process our experiences and emotions. Guilt, often considered a negative feeling, activates specific areas of our brain involved in problem solving. When we feel guilty about a financial decision, it's like ringing the alarm bell in our brain's decision-making center. This triggers an internal review of our actions and their consequences, launching us into a problem-solving mode. Now you might wonder, why would we want to activate this process? The answer lies in the realm of behavioral finance. This discipline marries the principles of psychology and economics to understand why people make the financial decisions they do and how they can make better ones. Several studies in this field have demonstrated that feeling regret can actually enhance decision-making. It's quite simple when you think about it. When we regret a decision, we reflect on what we could have done differently. This reflection helps us to learn from our mistakes and make better choices in the future. It's like a built-in course correction mechanism. Take, for instance, the regret felt after making an impulsive purchase. This regret can lead to a deeper understanding of our spending habits and trigger a change towards more mindful spending. Over time, this can add up to significant financial savings and even wealth accumulation. So what does this all mean? It means that guilt, often dismissed as a negative emotion, can actually be a potent tool in our financial toolbox. If we listen to our guilt, understand it, and use it as a catalyst for change, it can lead to improved financial decision-making. In other words, guilt can help us make smarter choices with our money. It can help us avoid financial pitfalls and move us closer to our financial goals. So next time you feel a pang of financial guilt, don't push it away. Embrace it, understand it, and let it guide you towards better financial decisions. This means guilt, if used correctly, can help you make better financial decisions. Now you're probably wondering, how can I use guilt to my advantage? Well, it's simpler than you might think. It all starts with awareness. Think about the last time you made a purchase that you later regretted. Maybe it was a pair of designer shoes you didn't really need, or perhaps it was that expensive meal at a fancy restaurant. These are the moments that trigger guilt, and they're also the moments that we can use to our financial advantage. First, start keeping track of these guilt-inducing purchases. Write them down, note the cost, and most importantly, jot down how you felt after the fact. This is not about shaming yourself, but about understanding your financial habits better. Now, let's delve a little deeper and introduce the concept of opportunity cost. This is the potential gain you missed out on, when you chose one alternative over another. So, in our designer shoe example, the opportunity cost might be the interest you could have earned if you had invested that money instead. When you start to look at your spending in terms of opportunity cost, the impact of those guilt-triggering purchases becomes even clearer. That pair of shoes not only cost you a couple of $100s, but also the potential to grow your wealth over time. But here's the exciting part. Once you've identified these guilt-inducing moments and calculated their long-term impact, you can start to make different choices. Instead of feeling guilty about your spending, you can choose to feel empowered by your ability to make better financial decisions. And remember, it's not about completely eliminating these guilty pleasures from your life. It's about understanding the true cost of your decisions and making choices that align with your financial goals. The key is to recognize these guilt-triggering moments and use them to your advantage. So the next time you feel that pang of financial guilt, don't brush it off. Embrace it, understand it, and use it to fuel your journey towards financial freedom. So, we've identified our guilt triggers. Now let's use them to build wealth. Welcome to the art of habit stacking, a concept that transforms our daily actions into powerful mechanisms for growth. It's simple. We take a habit we already do every day and stack a new habit on top of it. But in our case, we're going to stack our new habit on top of our guilt triggers. Here's how it works. Let's say you have a guilt trigger around buying expensive coffee every morning. You feel a pang of guilt every time you hand over that $5 bill. That's your cue. Instead of ignoring that feeling or beating yourself up about it, you acknowledge it and use it to fuel a new habit. Immediately after you feel the guilt, you do something positive. In this case, you transfer $10 into your savings account. You're taking that moment of regret and turning it into an action that benefits you. You're stacking a wealth-building habit on top of your guilt trigger. Over time, these small actions add up. Let's say you buy coffee 5 days a week. That's $50 transferred into savings every week. Over a year, that's $2,600. Over 5 years, it's $13,000. And that's not even considering any interest you might earn on that money. This method is effective because it uses something you're already feeling, guilt, and turns it into a powerful motivator for change. Instead of feeling bad about your financial decisions, you're using that feeling to propel yourself towards your goals. Of course, the amount you transfer doesn't have to be $10. It could be more, it could be less. The important thing is to make the transfer every time you feel the guilt. And remember, this isn't just about saving money. It's about changing your mindset, about seeing guilt not as a negative, but as a tool you can use to build wealth. Remember, every dollar saved is a step closer to your financial goals. So the next time you feel that pang of guilt, don't push it away. Embrace it and use it to fuel your journey towards financial freedom. Still skeptical? Let's look at some real-life stories where guilt led to gain. Take Avery, for instance. She was an avid shopper who often indulged in impulse purchases. One day, she bought a designer handbag that cost her $2,000. The purchase triggered a pang of guilt. She realized she had just spent a significant chunk of her savings on a bag she didn't really need. Instead of brushing off the guilt, Avery decided to take action. She returned the bag and put the money back in her savings. But she didn't stop there. She used the guilt from that purchase as a catalyst to change her spending habits. Every time she felt the urge to make an impulse purchase, she would transfer an equivalent amount into her savings. Fast forward 5 years, and Avery's savings account had ballooned. The guilt from that single purchase had sparked a complete transformation in her financial habits. The handbag that she almost bought, it was now worth a fraction of her savings. And then there's Jordan. He was a tech enthusiast who found himself constantly buying the latest gadgets. One day, he felt a wave of guilt after buying yet another smartphone he didn't need. Like Avery, he used this guilt to change his behavior. Instead of spending on gadgets, he started investing in tech stocks. Today, Jordan's investments have grown exponentially, far exceeding the cost of any gadget he could have bought. These stories show that with the right mindset, guilt can become a powerful wealth-building tool. It's not about dwelling on past mistakes, but rather learning from them and using those lessons to shape a more prosperous future. Avery and Jordan are just 2 examples, but there are countless others out there. So the next time you feel a pang of guilt after a financial decision, remember, it's not a sign of failure, but an opportunity for growth. After all, when you stop avoiding guilt and start using it, you don't just feel better, you get richer. Now, let's talk about measuring the progress you've made using guilt as a financial tool. The first step is to recognize that guilt in this context is not a negative emotion. It's a barometer, an early warning system that tells you when you're veering off the path to financial freedom. Each twinge of guilt is a signal to course correct, so it's important to not only acknowledge it, but to act upon it. Now, onto the measuring part. It's not about how many times you feel guilty, but about the positive changes these guilt triggers lead to. For instance, let's say you've been feeling guilty about your daily gourmet coffee habit. You decide to switch to home-brewed coffee, saving around $5 a day. That's not just $5 saved, but $5 that can be invested elsewhere, creating more wealth over time. So, how do you measure this? Start by tracking these guilt-triggered changes. Use a journal, a spreadsheet, or a budgeting app to record each time you make a financially sound decision as a result of guilt. Note the money saved and where it's being redirected. Over time, you'll see trends and patterns emerge. You'll see how much you've reduced unnecessary spending and how much more you've been able to invest or save. Another way to measure progress is by setting and achieving financial goals. If guilt triggers help you meet these goals faster, that's a clear sign of positive outcomes. For example, if your goal was to save $1,000 for an emergency fund and guilt-driven decisions help you reach that goal in half the expected time, that's a huge win. Remember, guilt triggers aren't about making you feel bad. They're about making you aware of your financial habits and helping you make better decisions. The real victory comes from turning that guilt into action and eventually, wealth. Tracking your progress is crucial. It's not just about feeling better, it's about seeing real financial growth. Are you ready to harness the power of guilt? It's time to put everything we've learned into action. Let's start with a challenge. Reflect on a recent financial decision that sparked a twinge of guilt. Perhaps it was that unnecessary online shopping spree, or maybe the extra large, extra pricey latte you didn't really need. Now, think about how you can flip that guilt into a positive action. What if, instead of buying that latte, you'd put that money into your savings, or even better, invested it? Picture the long-term impact of that single decision, and let that image fuel your future choices. This is not about dwelling on past mistakes, but about using that feeling of regret as a catalyst for change. When you stop avoiding guilt and start using it, you don't just feel better, you get richer. Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's start a conversation about guilt and wealth.